The next year will arrive whether you are ready or not. Time does not slow down for hesitation, fear, or excuses. Life is constantly moving forward, and if you do not move with intention, you will be dragged by circumstances you did not choose. Transformation does not begin with luck or opportunity. It begins with rules, clear, uncompromising rules that govern how you think, act, and respond to life. The first rule is to take full responsibility for everything you can control. Blame weakens you. Excuses keep you trapped. The moment you stop pointing outward and start looking inward, you reclaim power. Your past may explain where you are, but it does not decide where you are going. Responsibility is not punishment, it is freedom, because what you take responsibility for, you can change. The second rule: master your mind before it masters you. Your thoughts shape your actions, and your actions shape your life. An undisciplined mind magnifies fear, doubt, and distraction. A trained mind observes thoughts without obeying them. Learn to pause before reacting. Learn to question the stories your mind tells you. Control your attention and you control your direction. The third rule is to build discipline instead of waiting for motivation. Motivation is emotional and unreliable. Discipline is steady and dependable. Do the work whether you feel ready or not. Create routines that carry you forward on difficult days. Every time you act without relying on motivation, you strengthen your self-control and reduce your dependence on mood. The fourth rule is to embrace discomfort as the price of growth. Comfort preserves who you are. Discomfort creates who you can become. Avoiding difficulty may feel safe, but it quietly limits your potential. Growth demands effort, patience, and endurance. The sooner you stop running from discomfort, the sooner you begin to develop real strength. The fifth rule is to be consistent, not intense. Intensity burns fast and disappears. Consistency compounds. Small actions repeated daily will outperform rare moments of extreme effort. Show up even when progress feels slow. Trust the process of accumulation. What you do regularly shapes your identity and determines your results. The sixth rule is to respect and train your body. Your body is not separate from your mind. A neglected body weakens focus, discipline, and resilience. Move daily. Breathe with control. Rest with intention. Physical strength supports mental clarity, and mental clarity supports better decisions. Treat your body as a tool for growth, not an afterthought. The seventh rule is to reduce noise and protect focus. Distraction steals time, energy, and direction. If everything has your attention, nothing has your commitment. Learn to say no to what does not align with your goals. Focus is not about doing more, it is about doing what matters without interference. The eighth rule is to learn from pain instead of fearing it. Pain is unavoidable. Suffering is optional. When pain arrives, do not ask how to escape it. Ask what it is teaching you. Pain reveals weaknesses, limits, and lessons that comfort hides. When you learn from pain, it stops breaking you and starts shaping you. The ninth rule is to choose purpose over pleasure. Pleasure fades quickly and leaves emptiness behind. Purpose gives effort, meaning, and direction. When you know why you are working, sacrificing, and enduring, hardship becomes manageable. Purpose turns struggle into strength and gives your actions weight. The 10th rule is to act now, not later. Waiting for the perfect time is a silent form of fear. The perfect time does not arrive. Progress belongs to those who begin before they feel ready. Start with what you have, where you are, and improve as you move forward. Every delayed action strengthens doubt. Every immediate action builds confidence. Before 2026 arrives, you do not need to change everything at once. You need to change how you think, how you act, and what you tolerate. Transformation is not dramatic, it is deliberate. It happens in daily choices, quiet discipline, and repeated effort. The life you will be living next year is being built right now by the rules you follow today. Mastering the self is the foundation of every meaningful achievement. Before attempting to control circumstances, influence others, or conquer external challenges, one must first understand and govern the inner world. The greatest battles are not fought in public arenas, but within the mind, where fear, desire, doubt, and ego constantly compete for control. A person who has not mastered the self may appear powerful on the outside, yet remains weak within, easily shaken by criticism, failure, or temptation. The mind is naturally restless. It seeks comfort, avoids pain, and clings to habits, even when those habits are destructive. Without discipline, the mind becomes a servant to impulses, reacting instead of responding. Mastery begins when one learns to observe thoughts rather than obey them. When emotions arise, they are acknowledged without being allowed to dictate action. This awareness creates space between stimulus and response, and within that space lies freedom. A person who can pause, breathe, and choose consciously is already ahead of one who reacts automatically. Self-mastery requires honesty, especially when it is uncomfortable. It demands the courage to look inward and confront weaknesses without excuses. Blaming circumstances, people, or fate may protect pride, but it prevents growth. True strength develops when responsibility is accepted fully. Every mistake becomes a lesson, every failure a mirror. The individual who reflects instead of deflects gradually transforms flaws into tools for improvement. Discipline is the structure that sustains self-mastery. Motivation is fleeting and emotional, but discipline is deliberate and reliable. It is built through small, consistent actions performed daily, regardless of mood. Waking up on time, training the body, maintaining silence when words are unnecessary, and completing tasks even when they feel heavy are all acts of internal governance. Each disciplined action reinforces the message that the self is in command, not controlled by desire or discomfort. The body plays a critical role in mastering the self. A neglected body weakens the mind, while a trained body strengthens it. Physical training teaches patience, endurance, and humility, reveals limits, and then shows how those limits can be expanded through persistence. When the body is strong and regulated, the mind becomes more stable. Breath becomes calmer, reactions slow down, and clarity improves. Ignoring the body while chasing external success creates imbalance, and imbalance eventually leads to collapse. Silence is another powerful teacher. In silence, distractions fade and inner patterns become visible. Many avoid silence because it forces them to confront thoughts they have been running from. Yet, within that confrontation lies self-knowledge. Sitting in stillness develops control over attention and emotion. It trains the mind to remain steady instead of constantly seeking stimulation. The ability to be alone with oneself without discomfort is a clear sign of inner mastery. Desire must also be understood rather than suppressed or indulged blindly. Desire itself is not the enemy, but uncontrolled desire creates suffering. When a person is driven by cravings for validation, pleasure, or recognition, they become dependent on external approval. This dependency weakens autonomy. Mastery comes from choosing long-term growth over short-term satisfaction. The ability to delay gratification builds resilience and direction, allowing actions to align with values instead of impulses. Ego is often the greatest obstacle to self-mastery. It seeks superiority, comparison, and recognition. It resists correction and avoids humility. When ego leads, learning stops. A person who believes they already know enough closes the door to growth. Letting go of ego does not mean becoming weak. It means becoming flexible. Humility allows improvement. It creates openness to feedback and willingness to learn from anyone and anything. A humble mind absorbs wisdom effortlessly. Once the self is mastered, the world appears different. External challenges no longer feel overwhelming because inner stability remains intact. Success is approached with balance, and failure is met with composure. Influence becomes natural rather than forced. Others sense calm authority in someone who is not ruled by emotion or insecurity. Leadership in its truest form begins internally. One who cannot lead the self cannot guide others effectively. Attempting to master the world without mastering the self leads to constant struggle. Power without control breeds chaos. Knowledge without discipline creates arrogance. Ambition without awareness results in exhaustion. History is filled with examples of individuals who conquered territories, built empires, or accumulated wealth, yet were destroyed by their own lack of inner control. Downfall did not come from external enemies, but from unchecked impulses and fragile minds. Self-mastery is not achieved once and for all. It is a daily practice that requires patience and persistence. Each day presents opportunities to either strengthen or weaken it. The process is slow, quiet, and often invisible to others, but its effects are profound. Over time, the individual becomes less reactive, more intentional, and deeply grounded. The world may remain unpredictable, but the inner world becomes steady, and from that steadiness arises true power. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, punishment, or rigidity, yet in reality it is the highest form of self-respect. Motivation is emotional and unpredictable, rising when conditions feel right and disappearing when discomfort appears. Discipline, on the other hand, does not negotiate with mood or circumstance. It acts because action is required. Those who rely on motivation wait for the perfect moment, while those who build discipline create progress regardless of how they feel. Motivation is influenced by external factors such as praise, results, inspiration, or excitement. When these factors disappear, motivation fades. Discipline is internal and self-generated. It is a decision made in advance and honored repeatedly. This is why disciplined individuals continue moving forward even when energy is low, progress is slow, or results are invisible. They do not ask whether they feel like doing the work. They do the work because it is necessary. Consistency is the natural outcome of discipline. Motivation may spark a strong beginning, but discipline sustains the journey. Many people start with intensity, driven by excitement and hope, yet quit when reality demands patience. Discipline teaches endurance. It replaces bursts of effort with steady action. Small tasks completed daily accumulate into massive change over time. This quiet accumulation often goes unnoticed until results become undeniable. Discipline strengthens the mind by teaching it to obey conscious choice rather than impulse. Each time a person completes a task they would rather avoid, they reinforce control over their inner resistance. This builds confidence rooted not in words or intentions, but in proven action. Self-trust grows when promises made to oneself are kept. Over time, this trust becomes unshakable because it is built through repeated evidence. Motivation tends to chase comfort and reward. Discipline accepts discomfort as part of growth. Growth demands effort, sacrifice, and patience. Discipline prepares the individual to face difficulty without complaint. It trains the mind to remain steady under pressure. Instead of asking how to escape discomfort, discipline asks how to endure and learn from it. This shift in perspective transforms obstacles into training grounds. Discipline also removes the burden of constant decision making. When routines are established, actions become automatic. This conserves mental energy and reduces stress. There is no debate each morning about whether to train, study, or work. The decision has already been made. Discipline creates structure, and structure creates freedom. With fewer internal conflicts, focus sharpens and productivity increases. The body responds strongly to discipline. Regular movement, controlled breathing, and consistent rest create physical stability. A disciplined body supports a disciplined mind. When the body is neglected, the mind becomes restless and weak. Physical discipline teaches patience and humility. It reveals progress through effort, not shortcuts. Each session completed builds resilience and reinforces the connection between effort and outcome. Discipline is not about harshness or self-punishment. It is about alignment. It means choosing actions that serve long-term growth rather than short-term pleasure. This choice is repeated daily. The disciplined individual understands that comfort today can become regret tomorrow, while effort today becomes strength later. Pleasure fades quickly, but the results of discipline compound over time. Motivation often depends on clarity of purpose. Discipline creates clarity through action. Waiting to feel inspired before acting delays progress. Acting first often generates inspiration naturally. Movement creates momentum. Discipline initiates movement even when direction feels unclear. Through consistent effort, direction becomes visible. Purpose is strengthened by action, not discovered in stillness alone. Discipline also protects against emotional extremes. When success arrives, discipline prevents arrogance by maintaining routine. When failure occurs, discipline prevents collapse by providing structure. Emotions fluctuate, but discipline remains stable. Stability creates reliability in performance. Others come to trust disciplined individuals because their actions are predictable and consistent regardless of circumstance. Training discipline requires patience. It is built gradually through small commitments, honored consistently. Attempting to become disciplined overnight often leads to frustration. The process begins with manageable actions performed daily. Over time, the threshold for discomfort increases and discipline expands naturally. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once seemed impossible becomes routine. Discipline sharpens focus by eliminating unnecessary distractions. Time is no longer wasted on indecision or excuses. Energy is directed toward meaningful tasks. This focus accelerates learning and skill development. Progress becomes measurable. Each day builds upon the last. Discipline transforms time into a tool rather than an enemy. A disciplined life is not boring or restrictive. It is purposeful. It creates space for creativity by removing chaos. When essentials are handled consistently, the mind is free to explore, innovate, and reflect. Discipline provides the foundation upon which freedom is built. Without it, freedom becomes disorder. Those who rely solely on motivation are vulnerable to burnout and inconsistency. Those who cultivate discipline become resilient and adaptable. Discipline does not require excitement or approval. It requires commitment. Over time, discipline becomes identity. Actions align naturally with values. The struggle lessens because resistance weakens. What once required force becomes habit. The individual no longer seeks motivation because discipline carries them forward regardless of emotional state. The mind is the most powerful tool a person possesses, yet it is also the most dangerous if left untrained. It has the ability to create clarity or chaos, strength or collapse, progress or paralysis. Every action begins in the mind, and every outcome is shaped by how thoughts are managed. When the mind is disciplined, it becomes a weapon that cuts through obstacles. When it is neglected, it becomes a weakness that undermines potential from within. An untrained mind reacts to every stimulus. It is pulled by emotions, distracted by noise, and controlled by habits formed unconsciously. Such a mind magnifies fear, exaggerates problems, and turns temporary discomfort into permanent limitation. It dwells on past failures and worries about future outcomes, rarely staying grounded in the present. This constant fluctuation drains energy and clouds judgment, making even simple decisions feel heavy. Trained mind responds instead of reacting. It observes thoughts without immediately acting on them. This ability creates distance between emotion and behavior. Fear may arise, but it does not dictate action. Doubt may appear. It is examined rather than obeyed. This mental space allows reason to guide decisions instead of impulse. Over time, this control builds confidence rooted in stability rather than ego. The mind becomes a weapon when it is focused. Focus directs energy with precision. Without focus, effort is scattered and diluted. Many people work hard yet achieve little because their attention is divided. A focused mind commits fully to the task at hand. It resists distraction and remains present. This presence improves performance, learning, and awareness. Mastery in any field is impossible without sustained focus. Self-talk plays a critical role in shaping the mind's power. The words repeated internally influence perception and behavior. Negative self-talk weakens resolve and reinforces limitation, convinces the individual that effort is pointless and failure is inevitable. Positive self-talk is not about blind optimism, but about constructive guidance. It acknowledges difficulty while reinforcing capability. The way one speaks internally becomes the voice that either sharpens the weapon or dulls it. Fear is one of the mind's greatest tests. Fear itself is natural, but how it is interpreted determines its impact. An untrained mind treats fear as a stop signal. A trained mind treats it as information. Fear indicates uncertainty, not impossibility. By examining fear rather than avoiding it, the mind gains insight. Each confrontation with fear strengthens mental resilience and reduces its control over future actions. The mind also shapes identity. Repeated thoughts form beliefs, and beliefs drive behavior. If the mind constantly reinforces weakness, the individual begins to live within those limits. When the mind is trained to reinforce growth, identity evolves. Person no longer defines themselves by past mistakes, but by present effort. This shift in identity changes how challenges are approached and how setbacks are interpreted. Mental discipline requires practice, not theory. Reading and understanding are not enough. The mind must be trained daily through awareness, reflection, and intentional action. Moments of discomfort are opportunities to practice control. When irritation arises, observe it. When impatience appears, slow down. These small moments are training grounds. Over time, awareness becomes automatic and reactions weaken. The environment influences the mind, but the trained mind is not dependent on environment. Noise, criticism, and chaos will always exist without mental strength. These external factors dictate inner state. With mental strength, the inner state remains steady regardless of external conditions. Stability creates freedom. The individual no longer seeks perfect circumstances to function effectively. The mind becomes a weakness when it is filled with comparison. Comparing constantly creates dissatisfaction and insecurity. It shifts focus from personal progress to external validation. A trained mind measures growth against previous versions of itself, not against others. This internal benchmark encourages steady improvement and reduces unnecessary pressure. Emotional regulation is another marker of mental strength. Emotions are signals, not commands. When emotions control behavior, regret often follows. When emotions are understood and managed, decisions improve. The trained mind allows emotions to pass without suppression or indulgence. This balance prevents emotional exhaustion and impulsive mistakes. The mind is sharpened through challenge. Avoiding difficulty weakens it. Difficulty forces adaptation and growth. Each challenge faced and endured strengthens mental endurance. This endurance becomes a reserve that can be drawn upon in future adversity. Over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. A weak mind seeks escape through distraction and comfort. A strong mind seeks engagement and growth. This difference shapes daily choices. Trained mind chooses actions that build strength even when they are uncomfortable. It recognizes that comfort is temporary, capability lasts. Ultimately, the mind reflects how it is used. Neglect leads to weakness. Training leads to power. Every thought is either sharpening or dulling the blade. Awareness turns the mind into an ally rather than an obstacle. Control transforms it from a source of suffering into a tool for progress. The mind will either work for the individual or work against them, depending entirely on how it is trained and directed. Pain is often viewed as something to avoid, suppress, or escape, yet pain is one of the most honest teachers a person will ever encounter. It arrives without decoration or deception and reveals truths that comfort never will. While pleasure distracts and numbs, pain demands attention. It forces reflection, adjustment, and growth. When approached with awareness, pain becomes a guide rather than a threat. Most people fear pain because they associate it with failure, loss, or weakness. This fear creates resistance, and resistance amplifies suffering. Pain itself is neutral. It is the interpretation that gives it power. When pain is labeled as an enemy, the mind panics and seeks immediate relief, often at the cost of long-term growth. When pain is recognized as information, it becomes manageable and meaningful. Physical pain teaches boundaries. It signals overuse, imbalance, or injury. Ignoring it leads to damage. Running through the park while listening to it leads to adaptation. Training the body involves discomfort, but intelligent pain differs from destructive pain. Through experience, one learns to distinguish between the two. This awareness builds respect for the body and sharpens intuition. The body becomes a partner rather than an obstacle. Emotional pain exposes attachment. It reveals where expectations were placed, where identity was tied to outcomes, and where control was assumed but never existed. Loss, rejection, and disappointment strip away illusions and reveal what truly matters. These moments are uncomfortable, yet they refine character. Emotional pain teaches resilience by forcing the individual to stand without external support. Pain slows life down. It interrupts routine and demands presence. In this forced stillness, reflection becomes unavoidable. The mind begins to ask deeper questions about direction, purpose, and behavior. Without pain, many would continue moving blindly, repeating patterns that lead nowhere. Pain breaks momentum and creates space for change. Growth requires friction. Without resistance, cannot develop. Muscles grow by tearing and repairing. The mind grows by facing difficulty and adapting. Avoiding pain may create temporary comfort, but it weakens the capacity to handle future challenges. Each avoided discomfort becomes a missed opportunity for strengthening endurance. Pain also humbles. It removes arrogance and exposes vulnerability. This humility opens the door to learning. When everything feels easy, there is little incentive to improve. Pain reveals limitations, and in doing so, invites expansion beyond them. The individual who listens learns how to adjust, refine, and progress. Mental pain sharpens awareness. Anxiety, frustration, fear signal misalignment between expectation and reality. Instead of suppressing these signals, observing them provides insight. Anxiety may indicate lack of preparation or clarity. Frustration may reveal resistance to change. Fear may highlight areas that require courage. Each emotional response contains information that can guide action. Avoidance of pain often leads to greater suffering. Escaping discomfort through distraction, indulgence, or denial postpones growth. The pain does not disappear. It transforms into stagnation, regret, or chronic dissatisfaction. Facing pain directly shortens its duration and reduces its power. Acceptance does not mean surrender, acknowledgement without resistance. Pain builds perspective. It shifts priorities and strips away superficial concerns. After experiencing hardship, trivial problems lose their weight. Gratitude deepens because ease is no longer taken for granted. This perspective creates emotional maturity. The individual becomes less reactive and more grounded. Training the relationship with pain requires patience. It begins with observation rather than judgment. When pain arises, instead of asking how to escape it, ask what it is revealing. This shift in mindset transforms the experience. The pain remains, suffering decreases. Control returns to the individual rather than being surrendered to emotion. Pain also strengthens compassion. Those who have suffered understand others more deeply. This understanding softens judgment and increases empathy. Compassion rooted in experience is authentic and stable. It connects rather than isolates. Every significant transformation is preceded by discomfort. Change challenges identity and disrupts familiarity. Pain marks the transition between what was and what can be. Resisting this transition prolongs struggle. Moving through it with awareness accelerates growth. Pain is temporary, but the lessons it offers are permanent. Each lesson learned reduces future suffering. The individual becomes more adaptable, resilient, and aware. Pain loses its ability to intimidate because its purpose is understood. The mind decides whether pain becomes trauma or training. Interpretation shapes outcome. When pain is met with curiosity instead of fear, it transforms. The experience becomes a source of strength rather than damage. Pain demands presence. It pulls attention into the moment, away from distraction. In that presence, clarity emerges. Decisions become more intentional. Life becomes more conscious. Strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to endure it without losing direction. Pain refines discipline, sharpens awareness, and deepens character. It is not an obstacle on the path, but part of the path itself, shaping those who are willing to learn from it. Consistency is the quiet force behind all lasting power. Intensity attracts attention, but it fades quickly. It is dramatic, emotional, often unsustainable. Consistency, by contrast, is calm and deliberate. It does not rely on excitement or urgency. It relies on commitment. While intensity may create a strong beginning, consistency creates a strong foundation that supports long-term growth. Intensity often arises from motivation, inspiration, or pressure. It produces short bursts of effort that feel powerful in the moment. People push hard, expect fast results, and feel accomplished by the force they apply. When results do not appear quickly, intensity collapses. Fatigue sets in, enthusiasm fades, and progress stalls. The cycle repeats, leaving little to show for the effort. Consistency works differently. Accepts that progress is gradual and often invisible at first. It focuses on small actions repeated daily. These actions may seem insignificant on their own, but over time they compound. Each repetition reinforces skill, strengthens habit, and deepens understanding. The power of consistency lies in accumulation rather than force. Power built through consistency is stable. It does not depend on mood or circumstance. When actions are consistent, identity begins to align with behavior. A person who trains daily becomes a disciplined individual. A person who studies regularly becomes knowledgeable. This identity shift strengthens commitment because actions are no longer something to force, they are simply part of who the person is. Consistency builds trust with oneself. Each time a small commitment is honored, self-respect increases. This self-trust becomes a source of confidence that does not rely on external validation. The individual knows they can rely on themselves because they have proven it repeatedly. Intensity may create moments of pride, but consistency creates lasting self-belief. Skill development depends heavily on consistency. Mastery is not achieved through occasional effort, no matter how intense. It requires repetition, refinement, and patience. Consistent practice allows mistakes to be corrected gradually. Feedback is absorbed more effectively when exposure is regular. Over time, movements become precise, understanding deepens, and performance stabilizes. Consistency also reduces resistance. When an action is performed regularly, it requires less mental effort. What once felt difficult becomes routine. This reduces friction and increases efficiency. The mind no longer debates whether to act. Action becomes automatic. This automation frees mental energy for creativity and problem solving. Intensity often leads to burnout because it ignores limits. It demands maximum output without regard for recovery or sustainability. Consistency respects limits and works within them. It balances effort with recovery, allowing progress without exhaustion. This balance ensures that growth continues instead of collapsing under its own weight. Consistency sharpens focus. When actions are repeated daily, attention becomes trained. Distractions lose their appeal because priorities are clear. Time is used more effectively because routines guide behavior. The individual spends less energy deciding what to do and more energy doing it. This clarity accelerates progress. Power built through consistency is adaptable. When circumstances change, consistent individuals adjust rather than quit. Their commitment is to the process, not to a specific outcome. Intensity often ties effort to expectation. When expectations are not met, effort stops. Consistency continues regardless of immediate results. Consistency also builds resilience. Setbacks become part of the process rather than reasons to stop. A missed day does not lead to abandonment because the habit is strong. The focus remains on returning to the routine. This resilience protects progress from disruption. Physical strength is a clear example of consistency's power. Training sporadically with extreme effort leads to injury and inconsistency. Training regularly with manageable intensity builds strength steadily. The same principle applies to mental, emotional, and professional growth. Small daily efforts produce stronger results than rare extreme pushes. Consistency teaches patience. It trains the individual to value process over reward. This patience reduces frustration and increases satisfaction. Progress becomes measured by effort rather than outcome. This mindset supports long-term commitment. Consistency transforms time into an ally. Each day adds value instead of slipping away. Time compounds effort rather than erasing it. Intensity wastes time by requiring recovery from exhaustion. Consistency uses time efficiently by maintaining steady progress. Consistency also builds discipline. Discipline grows through repetition. Each repeated action reinforces control over impulse and emotion. This control extends beyond the original habit and influences other areas of life. The individual becomes more reliable, focused, and composed. The power created by consistency is quiet but undeniable. It does not announce itself or seek recognition. Reveals itself through results that appear effortless to others. What looks like talent or luck is often the product of years of steady effort. Intensity seeks shortcuts. Consistency builds paths. Shortcuts often lead to collapse, while paths lead forward. The consistent individual understands that growth is not about speed, but about direction. Consistency aligns effort with reality. It accepts that meaningful change takes time. This acceptance removes frustration and replaces it with calm determination. The individual continues moving forward even when progress is slow because they understand that progress is still occurring. Over time, consistency reshapes character. Actions repeated daily influence mindset, behavior, and values. The individual becomes disciplined, patient, and resilient. Power built this way is internal and unshakable. It does not depend on external conditions or recognition. It is carried quietly within and expressed through steady action day after day. Suffering is an unavoidable part of life. It appears in many forms: physical strain, emotional loss, mental pressure, uncertainty, and sacrifice. What determines its impact is not the suffering itself, but the meaning attached to it. Without meaning, suffering feels random and crushing. With a clear purpose, suffering becomes structured, directed, and transformative. Purpose gives pain a direction and turns endurance into strength. When a person lacks purpose, hardship feels like punishment. Every obstacle appears unnecessary, and every difficulty feels like a sign to stop. The mind searches for escape because there is no reason to continue. Fatigue becomes heavier, setbacks feel personal, and effort feels wasted. In this state, suffering drains energy and weakens resolve. A clear purpose changes perception. When a person knows why they are enduring difficulty, the difficulty becomes tolerable. Pain is no longer meaningless, part of a larger process. The mind shifts from avoidance to acceptance. Instead of asking why this is happening, focus becomes how to move through it. Purpose transforms resistance into commitment. Purpose acts as an anchor during instability. When circumstances are unpredictable, purpose provides direction. It does not remove hardship, but it prevents disorientation. The individual may struggle, but they do not drift. Each action, even in pain, aligns with a greater intention. This alignment creates inner stability even when external conditions are harsh. Suffering without purpose isolates. Suffering with purpose connects effort to identity. The individual begins to see themselves as someone who endures for a reason. This identity strengthens resilience. Endurance becomes a trait rather than a burden. The person no longer defines themselves by what they lack, by what they are building. Purpose also organizes energy. Without it, effort is scattered and quickly exhausted. With it, energy is directed. Mind prioritizes what matters and ignores what does not. This focus reduces mental noise and emotional confusion. Even limited strength is used effectively when guided by purpose. Physical hardship becomes training when purpose is clear. The body experiences strain, but the mind understands its value. Each repetition, each moment of discomfort contributes to a defined goal. Understanding reduces frustration and increases discipline. The body becomes stronger, but more importantly, the mind becomes steady. Emotional suffering also changes when purpose is present. Loss, disappointment, and rejection still hurt, but they no longer destroy direction. Purpose provides perspective. It reminds the individual that pain does not define the journey. Emotional wounds become sources of insight rather than permanent scars. Healing becomes intentional rather than passive. Purpose strengthens patience. When the goal is clear, time becomes an ally rather than an enemy. Delays are accepted as part of the process. Progress is measured by consistency rather than speed. This patience reduces anxiety and prevents burnout. Individual continues moving forward without demanding immediate results. A clear purpose also reduces fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty and confusion. Purpose creates clarity. Even when outcomes are unknown, the direction remains firm. This clarity allows action despite fear. Courage emerges not from the absence of fear, but from commitment to something greater than fear. Purpose transforms sacrifice into choice. Without purpose, sacrifice feels forced. With purpose, sacrifice becomes voluntary. The individual understands what they are giving up and why. This understanding prevents resentment. Effort feels meaningful rather than draining. Mental suffering often comes from conflict between values and actions. Purpose aligns them. When actions reflect purpose, inner conflict decreases. The mind becomes quieter. Doubt weakens because direction is clear. Even mistakes are viewed as adjustments rather than failures. Purpose also creates endurance. When exhaustion arrives, purpose provides a reason to continue. It reminds the individual that stopping has consequences beyond discomfort. This reminder fuels persistence. The body may tire, but the will remains engaged. Suffering sharpens awareness when purpose is present. Pain highlights weaknesses, limits, and areas for growth. Instead of being avoided, these insights are used. Individual becomes more adaptable and self-aware. Each challenge refines approach and strengthens capability. Purpose does not need to be grand or external. It can be personal and simple. What matters is clarity. The clearer the purpose, more effectively suffering is transformed. Vague goals produce weak endurance. Clear intention produces strength. Purpose also protects against bitterness. Without it, repeated hardship can harden the heart. With it, hardship deepens character. Compassion increases because suffering is understood as part of growth rather than injustice. This understanding prevents emotional decay. When purpose is absent, suffering feels endless. When purpose is present, suffering becomes temporary. It is seen as a phase rather than a sentence. This perspective sustains hope and direction. Built through purposeful suffering is deep and stable. It is not dependent on success or comfort. It is forged through endurance and clarity. The individual emerges more grounded, disciplined, and resilient. Purpose gives suffering a role rather than allowing it to dominate. It transforms pain into effort, effort into progress, and progress into strength. Without purpose, suffering weakens. With purpose, suffering refines, sharpens, and strengthens the individual from within.